What could I even say about God of War that hasn't been said already? It's easily one of the best games on the PS2, and it's one of my all-time favorite franchises. If the content warning was anything to go by in the beginning of the video, then you could probably tell we're on a pretty big journey here today. Let's go ahead and stop beating around the bush and go ahead and get this started.
The gods of Olympus have abandoned me. Now there is no hope.
And Kratos cast himself from the highest mountain in all of Greece. After 10 years of suffering, 10 years of endless nightmares, it would finally come to an end. Death would be his escape from madness. But it had not always been this way. Kratos had once been a champion of the gods.
Foul beast! I will send you back to the depths of Hades!
So yeah, God of War does not spend any time introducing you to anything. Your first taste of combat is going to be also your first introduction to any tutorial system of any kind. It's certainly a brave choice to just kind of throw a player into this sort of combat scenario immediately with no warning. Even still, I kind of feel like the game doesn't necessarily take all that long to acclimate to. Your starting set of attacks have some utility associated with them. You have light attacks which come out pretty quickly, but also govern basically all of your horizontal movement in terms of how your blades are going to be able to swing. Your heavy attacks are the opposite. They govern all of your vertical movement with your blades. They also come out a little bit slower too. Like I said before, this first section is pretty easy. We just need to clear out all of these legionnaires and then open up the trapdoor and continue on. I'd like to propose a thought experiment real fast for you all. Imagine back then whenever you were playing this game for the first time. I'd like to imagine that the PS2 was sort of the end of the Wild West days for video game consoles sort of in general. In terms of games with a fully forced cinematic sort of perspective that you're given, games as sort of a cinematic thing were probably pulled off the best in this game and then also tangentially in games like Metal Gear Solid 3. Having video games presented as almost movies was a thing that we didn't really have until those games came out. And I think a lot of it boils down to just the presentation of everything. The cutscenes in this game, for example, and the first level in this game and in Metal Gear Solid 3. Just the cinematic presentation of stuff like this really wasn't a thing until these games came out. And I don't think it's crazy to say that they sort of set a precedent for games going forward. Hydra jump scare. So yeah, this whole beginning part is pretty weird. I was kind of blind to it since growing up, but throwing a boss health bar within 10 minutes of just starting the game is certainly different. And the game didn't even care to give us like an intro cutscene or anything showing off the Hydra. It's pretty simple though, just every time it rears up for an attack, press the block button and don't take damage. It's that simple. Man, talk about a game really forcing your attention immediately. I'm not sure really why they felt the need to blindside you with all of this immediately. I mean, like, none of the other games are like that, and it's fine in the grand scheme of things, but I don't know, this first level's really cool at least.
I know who you are, Spartan. I know what you've done. I would rather die than be saved by you.
Well, alright then. So yeah, I should probably start talking about the weird glowy things that are flying towards me. And hey, what do you know, there are orbs in this game too. The rorbs in this game, again, act as currency. Huh, weird. Kinda like in DMC1. It's almost like this game was inspired by DMC1. Not like that was the case or anything. I'm joking, it is, actually. This game was inspired by Devil May Cry 1, and also Onimusha of all games, which is really weird, but okay. The red orbs are currency, though. You use them to upgrade your weapons, and you need a pretty good amount of them to get them up to the next level. Whenever you get a level up for a weapon or a spell, it'll do things like increase its damage, and then it'll also give you a whole host of new moves instead of getting just one like in a DMC game. But also, a lot of the times, it changes how the weapon itself looks. In the case of the Blades of Chaos, your primary weapon you're going to be using for most of the game, they're going to physically change the color of it. Basically, as you level it up, the blades will get more red in color, which is a pretty good signifier that you're getting stronger. The other orbs, though, are much more simple. Green orbs refill your health, and blue orbs refill your magic, but we don't have any magic right now, so we'll probably talk more about that later. Hey look, it's the Hydra again. So, yeah, there's kind of a weird thing about the first God of War games, but bosses in this game in specific are pretty sparse all throughout the entire game. There's only 3 bosses with an actual health bar that you come across in the entire game. And how the bosses are portrayed in this game is kind of the antithesis to how the rest of the series works. I'm gonna mention this now just because if I don't, then I'll forget. But basically in the rest of the God of War games, you'll encounter the bosses as you're going through a given level. It'll be things like parts of them, or maybe some of their influence throughout a level, or maybe they're just talking smack to you as you're going about it or something. And then you finally have a showdown with them at the end of that level. There's a part of me that wants to say the Hydra is sort of the first version of this idea. The other 2 bosses in this game really don't do this, they kinda just show up for the most part. The final boss at least has some sort of actual screen time before you fight him, but it's not like he has any real relevance in terms of, like, changing the level or immediately getting in your way or anything. And I know this point is a really minor thing to bring up, but it's just kind of weird to see if you're thinking about it from a sort of hindsight angle. So a little bit more just about the basic combat for a sec. Not only is your vertical attack, your heavy attack, capable of dealing high damage to an enemy, but holding the button will also launch them in the air. If you continue to hold the button for even longer, you'll launch yourself up in the air. This will give you access to air combos and such. Juggling enemies can be a pretty good way to get, like, large enemies just out of the way and no longer being a threat to you for a little while, especially if you get good at focus firing on them for a long enough time. Alternatively, because this game doesn't have a free camera, the right stick is delegated to a dodge mechanic. You can only dodge in 4 directions, but it gets the job done for the most part. And whatever you can't dodge just because the dodging is clunky, you can also block. Blocking is done with the L1 button. You don't take any chip damage or anything, so just block whatever you can if you feel threatened. Timing a block specifically with enemy attack, though, will result in a parry, and the timing isn't very tight. The parry mechanic and blocking in general will get sort of built up upon as we get our blades upgraded, but that's gonna be a discussion for later.
It's you! The visions, they were real! The gods came to me, told me their champion would come and rescue us from the Hydra. But you're too late! We're pinned down! These creatures, they came from nowhere. The ships are all destroyed. All hope is lost, Spartan. Even for you.
Oh, cool. Save point. So yeah, the enemies currently firing arrows at us are still Legionnaires. Those are the most basic enemies that we come across in the entire game. God of War handles its enemy variety in a pretty interesting way, though. A lot of the most basic enemies will basically see evolutions as time goes on. It'll be things like them getting more armor and using more dangerous looking weapons and such. In the case of the Legionnaires specifically though, there's only two variants for the Legionnaires though. The ones using bows and then obviously the ones using melee weapons. There is another one technically, and we'll talk about it when we get there too, but it's just little things to make sure that the gameplay still feels fresh while still, you know, just making sure that it's not taking up too much disk space or too much brain power for the player to sort of figure out how to deal with the enemies. They're just the same enemy, they just get more dangerous as time goes on because you're progressing, which, fair enough. Also, this game has puzzles, I guess. This first block pushing puzzle is nothing really to write home about. It's basically just a tutorial on the kick mechanic that you're given. I'm not gonna sugarcoat how this works or anything, it just, you push the block faster by charging up a kick and then unleashing it on the box and pushing it forward real fast. It's always been a little awkward in all of the games, but it gets the job done and it has some uses in puzzle solving and not just speeding up slow box pushing. It's a little wrinkled though, and it helps set these puzzles apart from other block pushing puzzles of their ilk. So while they might be a little weird, they get a pass from me personally, for the most part.
Find the key! Find the key! They're coming!
There's a lot of climbing mechanics in this game, and most of them work pretty good too. When regarding specifically the wall climbing, in whatever form it may take, your attack options are basically a quick jab or a wide slash. The jab is good for one enemy that's in your face, and the swipe is good for several enemies in any direction you choose. You can also grab enemies using the circle button, and that'll basically just immediately kill them. Its range is by far the shortest, so, you know, it doesn't get a whole lot of use unless you just want to deal with a bunch of enemies in quick succession, like one after the other. But I kind of like this. It's like quick moment-to-moment decisions that you have to make while you're climbing on something. It's not all that hard, but it's not completely brainless either, so I don't know, it works. Sorry, I just like the zipline thingy. So yeah, we got items here too. All throughout the game, you'll collect these items that are in these chests. They're typically the unmarked ones. As of right now, we're only introduced to the health upgrade. Collect 5 of these Gorgonized and you'll get a health extension. You can also use it to fully re-heal yourself too if you're running out of health.
Lord Poseidon.
Kratos, before you reach Athens, there is a task you must complete. This beast, this Hydra, it has terrorized my seas for far too long. Your skills are admirable, but you will need assistance. You will need the power of the gods. Take this weapon, Kratos. Take this power and use it to defeat your enemies. Go with the gods, Kratos. Go forth in the name of Olympus.
Okay, so we just got our first magic. Or spell, or whatever they're called. Poseidon's Rage is probably one of the best introductions that I could possibly ask for. It does good damage, it has a great AoE, and it's a ridiculous multi-hit. That last part doesn't sound too important until you consider the hit counter that's appearing on the right side of the screen. Basically every 10 or so hits you'll get an orb bonus. Because of how rapidly Poseidon's Rage hits, it'll basically start turbocharging that number as high as it'll possibly go. Whenever you have a bunch of enemies near you, this will easily reach into the hundreds in terms of how high that number can go. I can't say it's a great way to grind for orbs necessarily, but it's a damaging attack. It's meant to get rid of a bunch of enemies quickly. The orb thing is kind of just a bonus. Also, it turns off your hurt box, so you can technically use it to avoid damage.
Get them away from the ship! Why won't they die?
It's the giant one! He keeps healing the others!
No, God! We'll never get out of here! Doomed! We're doomed! We're all... Sign it. Save me.
Okay, so now it's time for the real Hydra fight. This boss fight has a couple of little wrinkles. On the one hand, both of the mini Hydra heads on the ship itself only really have a couple of attacks. The interesting thing with this fight specifically, though, is that the ship hand at the beginning there was correct. Basically, the idea here is to whittle down both of the head's health bars to where they fall at roughly the same time. The timing isn't tight or anything, but if you focus fire on one, then you'll definitely leave enough room for the other head to just regenerate and come back with full health again. Also, both of the heads prevent you from reaching the main head, so you have to deal with them first. That one attack where they sort of drag you to the opposite head is sort of steering you in this direction. The main Hydra head only really has one attack. The only other thing it can do is scream at you and push you further off of the platform, but that doesn't really do anything. The wind-up for his one attack, though, does last a pretty long time, so if you want to use Poseidon's Rage to kind of negate all of the damage and do a bunch of damage to him, then that does work pretty well. That's pretty much it for this fight, though. Like, I don't know. It's just a spectacle fight, and I get that. It is also just the first boss, so I mean, it's not like there's anything wrong with it.
Please, someone help me! Anyone! Thank you! Thank the gods you came back for me!
I didn't come back for you.
No!
I really like the quiet moments of this game specifically. The parts of the game where just the entire OST is subdued to make room for whatever you're currently walking through, giving the environment like room to breathe and everything. This one in specific is pretty powerful just because it's the first real break that we had. Since we started the game, it's been go the whole time, so this is weirdly strong, all things considered.
Slaughtered like animals, the victims lay before him, a reminder of his own past, a past he could never escape. His only solace was the sea, endlessly sailing from one harbor to the next in service to the gods of Olympus. All his hopes rested with them. For no matter how much wine he consumed or how many women he took to his bed, nothing on earth could rid him of the horrors that plagued his mind.
Athena! 10 years, Athena. I have faithfully served the gods for 10 years. When will you relieve me of these nightmares?
We request one final task of you, Kratos. Your greatest challenge awaits in Athens, where even now my brother Ares lays siege as we speak. Athens is on the verge of destruction. It is the will of Ares my great city fall. Zeus has forbidden the gods from waging war on each other. That is why it must be you, Kratos. Only a mortal trained by a god has a chance at defeating Ares.
And if I am able to do this, to kill a god, then the visions, they will end?
Complete this final task, and the past that consumes you will be forgiven. Have faith, Kratos. The gods do not forget those who come to their aid.
Leaving the rotting carcass of the Hydra behind, Kratos set sail once more. His greatest challenge and freedom from his growing madness lay before him in the ancient city of Athens.
Right, so real fast, sorry to randomly butt in, but there's 2 bundles of polygons that are called women on those beds, and they're fully nude still. I can't show that on YouTube. That being said, there is a sex minigame in every single one of the OG God of War games, and I'm very close to a level up, so just give me a sec. Anyway, let's upgrade the blades real quick.
Let the rage of the gods drive your blades, Kratos.
Okay, so 3 things. First off, no, that's not the last time you're going to see a sensor bar. 2, hey look, we got a bunch of new moves like I was saying. I don't know if I'll feel the need to explain every move, just ones that are very noteworthy. And then 3, we did get something of a transformation. If you're coming fresh off of the DMC video, you might call this as some sort of devil trigger, but for God of War, almost. It works quite a bit differently, but that will also be mentioned later.
Destroy Ares, and the gods will forgive you your past.
One other thing I'll mention, just for the sake of saying it too. If you're wondering why the very end of the screen is cut off, especially in menus, it's an emulator issue. I probably could have not mentioned it the whole time and nobody would have said anything, but it's just, it gave me so much of a headache whenever I was trying to figure out how it worked. And I guess just emulator problems are going to be a running gag on this channel because just, it seems to happen with every game that I play on here for some reason. So yeah, also, the last sort of basic combat option I haven't mentioned yet is the grab mechanic. Grab is bound to circle. You can grab any enemy with a circle floating above their head. With the exception of the very beginning enemies, you can just freely grab them. There's also, to my knowledge, one enemy that is not early game exclusive, that you can just freely grab to do damage to, but also, grabs govern the mini-games that you come across. The game calls these mini-games, but we all know what these are called. They're QuickTime events. QuickTime events, or QTEs, was a really hotly debated topic all across the early 2000s. Most people remembered them so ill-fondly that you would have thought they killed their first child collectively or something. It's weird because specifically only some games did it correctly, and the answers for what games did it correctly is going to vary based on the person. I think over time, people sort of warmed up to the idea of QTEs a lot more. There are games out now that are just basically a walking simulator with QTEs in them. Specifically, anything by David Cage, the guy that made Heavy Rain and stuff like that. But it's really weird though, how like an entire gaming community as a whole can just do a 180 turn. Slowly, over time, definitely, but still weird to me. In other news, the Legionnaires got some new digs. It's pretty cool. They also have this new big leaping blue swipe attack. It's pretty easy to parry, so just do that if you see them charging it up. And hey, the other primary collectible we have access to. Yeah, 5 Phoenix Feathers will increase your magic. It works just like the Gorgonize. I guess I should take this time to explain chests a little bit too, because they are just a little bit more complicated than what they seem. Typically, whenever you come across a chest, they come in 3 different colors, one corresponding to each orb type that you come across. And they help fill those given stats based on what color they are. They line up with the color. It's not that hard to figure out. Colorless chests, though, are interesting. They can either contain red orbs, or they can contain the Gorgonize or Phoenix Feathers. You don't really know what you get until you open it, but if it's a red chest or a colorless chest, then it's worth your time to open up just anytime you see them. The chests for health and magic, though, it might actually be a wiser idea to save those. There's not really a whole lot of ways to heal in this game. Because you're running around in an interconnected map, it might be a wiser idea to save the chest whenever you see them. It's a risk-reward sort of gameplay system. It's just really simple. Simple, but not ineffective. Another cool little thing about this, though, is the mixed chests, or whatever the game internally calls them. Basically, they're chests that'll flip-flop between green and blue. It's up to you whichever one you want to refill. Do you need health more, or would you rather have magic right now? Again, it's really simple, but it's effective for its simplicity.
Run! Run! The beasts have taken Athens! Look out! No! No! Stay away from me!
So, Minotaurs are surprisingly interesting. They're basically just your run-of-the-mill slow, hard-hitting enemy. But the cool thing is that specifically in regards to their QTE, completing the QTE will consistently net you green orbs, which is a good way to heal yourself if your HP is getting low. The reason you might not want to do the QTE though is because it doesn't actually net you any red orbs. Killing them normally does though. The economy is surprisingly tight in ancient Greece. It's just another quick gameplay decision you gotta make. Can I afford to kill them normally, or do I really need health right now? It's cool, and going forward this is gonna be a consistent thing in the original 3 God of War games, even if they don't feel the need to tell you, which is a little weird. I really don't know why, but the lever noise in this game just lives rent-free in my head for some reason.
You have reinforcements! reinforcements arrived! Ares has brought these beasts to Athens! Without help, the city will fall! Gates destroyed! You'll have to find another way out!
These slower, even harder hitting guys are called Cyclops. There's really not much to them, and these variants of them specifically are kind of pushovers. You can't block any of their attacks, so just anytime you see them winding up, go ahead and hit a dodge direction. They get a little more challenging later on, but as they stand right now, they're not a huge issue or anything. I like their QTE though. Can I just say how cool of an area Athens is for a minute? I think a big reason we started in the Aegean Sea of all places was because you had to basically earn the right to go through a proper ancient Greece environment. The level design and architecture here specifically though is just really cool because it's like realistically mythological, kinda, sorta. Like yeah, a lot of this stuff wouldn't make sense to be in the actual ancient Greece, but at the same time it's like, it's somewhat realistic and it makes sense for the world the game is set in, you know? I know the game and the video so far has been a lot of go, 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 but despite that I think the game at least is paced really well.
Aphrodite.
Kratos, the gods are pleased with your progress, but your current skills will not be enough to defeat the minions of Ares. I offer you the power to freeze your enemies where they stand, but you must earn such a gift. Medusa, the queen of the Gorgons. Bring me her head, Kratos, and I will give you the ability to wield its power.
Did y'all know that motion tracking a sensor bar is an utter nightmare? So this is Medusa. This fight is probably going to throw you for a loop your first go around. For one, she's incredibly fast and very evasive. It's almost impossible to hit her with a heavy attack. But if you're even remotely familiar with Greek myth, then you'll know that Medusa is good at one thing. Being naked, I guess. No, it's her stone stare, of course it is. So yeah, Medusa can petrify you in this game. That's obviously an issue, but actually, if she hits you whenever you're petrified, it will result in instant death. You can theoretically wiggle the stick to break out of the petrification, but if she's already winding up an attack, you're as good as dead already. Instead, it would be wisest to avoid it altogether by basically just rolling around a bunch. This goes for the enemies too, but basically the main way to prevent being petrified is just movement in general. The more movement, the better, so just roll a lot.
Freeze and destroy them all with Medusa's gaze, and the power of the Gorgon will be yours.
Consistency in terms of your equipment in these games is something that we don't really get a whole lot of, with one of the notable exceptions being whatever Gorgon head you currently have. Medusa's Gaze is our second magic item, or spell, I still don't know what to call these. Like Medusa herself, we have the ability to petrify enemies. Whenever you petrify an enemy, basically imagine them getting a second health bar that is very, very short, but needs to be reduced to 0 in order to actually kill them. There's a couple of neat little nuances with this spell though.
Go with the gods, Kratos. Go forth, in the name of Olympus.
For one, in order to actually freeze any enemy, they have to basically be just walking towards you or otherwise completely still. If they're winding up an attack, it's basically impossible to freeze them, at least for the time being. When they are frozen, the quickest way to get rid of them is simply square triangle. This does a ludicrous amount of damage for I don't know why, but it's the most effective way. Just do that when you see an enemy frozen. And just two last things for right now as well. Airborne enemies immediately shatter upon hitting the ground, and any enemy killed this way will also net you a bunch of bonus orbs. Nice. I think you can tell that it pays to sort of go off the beaten path and just check everything, be as thorough as possible. Even the set pieces or puzzle elements that this game has will end up giving you some pretty nice bonuses. And actually, puzzles in a character action game is a pretty interesting thing. The puzzles in this game are just a little bit more advanced than something like a locked door and a key that goes to it or something. It's not a lot more than that. Most of the puzzles in this game are pretty simple, but I think if you ask most people who are trying to deconstruct this game, they serve kind of a double purpose. I mentioned before how the moments of quiet in this game are particularly impactful, and I think with regards to the puzzles specifically, they act as their own separate, impactful moments of quiet. They're breaks from all the action, and they're effective for what they are. Some of the puzzles even get, like, surprisingly involved, too. And I don't know, I just really like their inclusion, I guess. Wait, this race of creature isn't called Medusa. They're Gorgons. The Persephone cutscene did that, right? Why are they... whatever, nitpicking up... whatever. So yeah, Gorgons are regular enemies now. Or Medusa, I guess. All the notes and tips that I gave for Medusa apply here to the Gorgons as well, with a little added bonus that whenever you do the QTE for Gorgons, it'll always net you magic orbs, like with the health orbs for the Minotaurs. Ow. And weighing your options with the Gorgons works the same with the Minotaurs too. It's up to you whether or not you need magic or red orbs more. Okay, so I'm gonna be completely honest here. These rope segments suck. For starters, they're really slow to traverse, which is already not a good thing, and we don't get any way to move faster until the second game. But where it really gets bad is whenever they start introducing enemies. Legionnaires will start climbing on either side of the rope. Sometimes they like to do just a basic attack, which is not the end of the world, but a lot of the times they like doing their own grab attack, which immediately starts this QTE where you have to wiggle the left stick back and forth as fast as possible. This completely stops all of your movement, and the worst part is that they like to chain this back to back to back. You do kill the Legionnaire whenever you get them off of you, but they're just so insistent on doing it to you, it's the worst. If you want some pro tips, I have two. For one, if you want to get rid of the Legionnaires in front of you immediately, simply press square for the hit stun and press circle to grab them. It doesn't trigger a QTE and you just get them out of the way immediately. If you have Legionnaires on either side of you, my best recommendation is to press square and flip the stick back and forth to basically keep them in hit stun. Neither of these are surefire ways to get them off of you, but it's better than nothing. Okay, so quite unfortunately, I think I have to end the video here. This game is definitely one of the longer ones that I've had to make a video essay for, and unfortunately, in order to keep a consistent upload schedule, I have to make a part 1. That being said, if you did like the video, subscribe for part 2. I upload every Friday, and I don't know if part 2 is going to come out next Friday, but for sure the week after we'll definitely have another God of War upload. I have a very good feeling that this entire series is going to be nuked by the algorithm, so feel free to like it or share if you think it was worth your time. I also have a Patreon you can donate $1 a month to, you know, if you want your name at the end of the video, and if you want to join a Discord server. With all that being said though, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. Have a good day, everybody.